Hello, good morning. We are live, and this is a fabulous session with Rebecca Pay, how to write a kick-ass CV with transferable skills. Hi, my name is Bini Matharu. I am the founder of the Empower Me Hub, and I always invite guest speakers who have fabulous things to share, like Rebecca has, and we both actually live on school. Literally, we are in school all the time, aren't we? On not
Yes.
in a real school, but in SKOOL on the platform where we actually met. And Rebecca has her own community. I have my own community, and yeah, if you're interested to check us out, we'll share the link as well. So, Rebecca, just a little of introduction before I let you run the session. It's going to be like your hands-on, right? So, as I understand, Rebecca, you are a CV writer and founder of Pay for Precision CV Writing. And on school, you call yourself the Kick-Ass Job Squad, right? That's your school group, and you help professionals and leaders land interviews with standout, no BS CVs. And I absolutely love this because I think it's a very good topic. It's very important to stand out. And the question is, how can we actually stand out from the crowd? Because there's, I don't know how many jobs for, or how many people are actually want to be interviewed for one job. You're probably going to share some stats and some very helpful tips today. So, Rebecca, I'd like to have you take the stage. And yeah, very curious what we're going to be sharing with us today, and some helpful tools and tips and tricks.
Thanks, Irene. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you inviting me here to share. I will say to start with, we've got a lot to get through. There's a lot of information I'm trying to overwhelm everyone with, but it's basically something you might want to watch on replay as well. But maybe take some notes if you can, because I want to get across as much information as I can, because I think the more you know about how to write your own CV and how to use your transferable skills, the more empowered you can be to actually get an interview, which at the end of the day is what we all want. It is a tough job market, like you said. It's not an easy time out there, whichever country you're in. So the kind of more optimized you can be in all those different areas, the better. But we are focusing on CVs today. So I will crack on with just a very small bio about me, because I hate doing these sort of things. But I do have a book on Amazon, which I always forget to tell anyone about, but it's called How to Get the Kick-Ass Career You Deserve. I've got about 33,000 followers on LinkedIn. I've been going on there for quite a while. I'm a CV writer, but I also do proofreading and copywriting. I'm very proudly neurodivergent myself, and I've got two autistic kids. So we've got quite a fun autistic/ADHD household. I help senior leaders get interviews, essentially, because the CV is basically the door to your interview. It's not what gets you the job. You have to do the little bit of work in an interview, but that's a whole other subject, isn't it? And like you've been told, I do run the Kick-Ass Job Squad on School, which is a kind of a job group for anyone looking for a role, or even if you're looking to step up into your next role. It's a supportive group where we all kind of help each other to take the next step. So let's start with the basics. Why do you even need a CV? What even is it? So it sounds silly because everyone kind of knows what it is, but it's good to have a reminder, I think, that it's actually a showcase of your skills and experience. It's not an entire life story of like every single job you've ever had, everything you've ever done, every single skill you've got. You need to be a little bit picky about what you're putting on there. It can show a journey. Obviously, it could show a journey of like where you've moved through different roles, or if you started as an apprentice and now are kind of like ahead of something. It can be great to show that journey, but you don't need to kind of show every single step of every job you've ever had, because 2 pages is usually enough. And for a lot of people, if you're trying to show every single job, it's going to be way more than 2 pages. It's not a set rule of 2 pages. If you're a graduate and you've not had that much experience, 1 page may well be enough, or you can do a 1 page summary sometimes of any level. But 2 pages normally the right sort of level of detail you're wanting to get across. Occasionally people need 3 pages if they have an absolute ton of like specific training. Sometimes engineers have got loads of technical stuff they need to put on. This might be various reasons, or you've authored loads of papers or something, you need to list them. There's sometimes good reasons for having a third page, but make sure there is a good reason and it's not just because you've waffled on. You need to also use it to match the job role you're applying to. So whilst you might have a core CV that you write in general, you need to then adapt it every time you apply for a role, which I will talk about a bit more. But it's something that people feel like takes up a lot of time. It can take up some time, but honestly, it's worth putting the work in. It's better for you to adapt for every application that you make than just have one CV that you send to like hundreds and hundreds, especially in today's job market. You want to stand out, so the more effort you put into each application, the better. And also think about the transferable skills that you've got, because that the CV is a perfect place to kind of showcase those, which obviously we'll be touching on today. So I'm going to address this early on, which is ATS, because everyone, when they talk about CVs, usually starts freaking about ATS. And obviously nowadays with AI involved as well, most ATS systems are kind of connected with AI as well. So it's called applicant tracking software. It's basically, it's not out there to get you. People are kind of scaremongered about it somewhat, especially in the CV writing world. But at least 70% of global companies are using AI. And honestly, it can be even higher percentages when you're looking at US or UK, because that's globally. So it's a high percentage of people that are using AI and or some kind of ATS system. It's basically a system that transfers your data from your CV onto their system and kind of sorts it, or like might shortlist CVs. It's not something that's there to trip you up, but it's something you need to be aware of how it might work. So there can be some things that cause issues. As time moves on and the systems get better, some of these things aren't always such an issue as they used to be, but it's still something to be aware of. That, for example, using photos is ill-advised. I mean, to be honest, in the UK and US, you shouldn't be putting a photo on there anyway, unless you're kind of applying for a modeling job or something. Imagery or graphics of any kind are kind of not a good idea. Even colored backgrounds with text and sort of blocks of color. Blocks of color are okay. Like say you have a header of with some color at the top to kind of brighten up the whole thing. Things like that are okay, but I'm talking about if you have your text and then you put a block of color behind it, it can kind of affect how the system reads things. It also can affect how a human reads it, honestly. If it's not that easy to read for anyone, then that's probably not a good idea, because you don't know who's going to be reading it. If it's someone that doesn't have the best eyesight or something, you don't want to be putting them off. Using old or fancy fonts is not a good idea, because if the system reading it doesn't have that font, it's going to default it to something horrible, or maybe not even be able to pick it up. I've known people use like really obscure fonts because they like the look of it, but it's just not a good idea. Just use one of the standard ones. I tend to use Calibri. It's like my favored one, but any of those kind of top 5 ones are usually pretty good. Try not to use text boxes as well. I've known of instances of someone putting all their skills into a text box and then the ATS system just didn't pick up anything in a text box. So basically none of their skills were picked up. It's probably rarer now because systems are a bit more advanced, but it's probably still not a good idea to risk it, honestly. My whole argument with it is if you keep it simple, then none of these things can cause you a problem. You'll know it's not one of these problems that, that's not why you didn't get shortlisted. You can't blame the ATS system. Columns, again, can cause issues. It's also, to be honest, if you've written a CV with columns or really fancy layout, if you are then adapting it for each role, it's a nightmare. Like every time you try and add something or take something away, like it moves or everything stands, and like you have to keep reformatting it all the time. Whereas the simpler it is, the easier it is to edit it. And you want to tailor your CV with keywords. So when you look at a job description, you look at the main keywords of the things they're looking for. So it is as simple as that. If they're looking for someone that's got really good communication skills or has got certain software experience, you need to make sure you're putting that on your CV so that it literally can match up those things, because some of these systems are set up where they're looking for certain keywords. And AI is very clever now. It would even pick up on the semantics of it. So just keyword stuffing is just not, I mean, I'd never advise it anyway, but it's really not advised now because, they'll pick up on it if it's badly written. So a quick example of a suck-ass CV, because obviously all my CVs are kick-ass. It's an extreme example, obviously, but just to kind of make the points. that obviously we've got a photo. Anyone who's a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will recognize Arthur Dent. And yes, we can be friends if you know who he is. But yeah, so a photo, not a good idea. A full address, again, not a good idea. No one needs your full address. You're not going to be sitting at home waiting for the post to see if you got a job. Like, that's just not going to happen anymore. So also, do you really want to put your address on something that's going on the internet and being spread around to goodness knows who? Probably not. Weird kind of colored text dropped all over the place. Again, looks rubbish. Stuff in text boxes, not a good idea. And also skills. I've seen this on CVs, which is why I've put it on here, where people rate their own skill levels. Really odd, if you ask me. Where is that coming from? It's just, you've just made it up. Like, you've just decided, oh, I've got this much skill in this area. It's just a bit weird. And like, this person's obviously rated themselves as communication skills as 60%. And you think, well, obviously maybe you're not that good at communicating. Like, why would you even say that? So yeah, don't bother with that. Obviously, things like having the same font, it's extreme here, but like using the same font throughout looks far cleaner and tidier. You can have different sizes, but maybe not to the extreme where, tiny little text and then massive text. It looks kind of weird. You just want it to look clean and clear and have lots of white space. Also, they've included their GCSEs and A levels. Again, once you've done a degree or something that's related to the work you do, you don't need to usually share like anything pre-degree level. So GCSEs and A levels become a bit obsolete after a certain amount of time. I mean, I got 10 A's for my GCSEs, but it's only ever useful to share on something like this, and it's not really, and no one cares. Like, I'd love to be able to tell everyone about it, but what's the point now? It was a very long time ago, unfortunately. Interests, only if they're interesting. This person's talking about how they're a tea drinker and they like sandwich making. If it's something quite dull, then there's no point. You're just using up valuable space. So kind of stick to stuff that's going to have some talking point or interest. And if you're interested just like standard, that's okay. Like, lots of us like just going for a walk or whatever, but you just don't need to put it on your CV. So an example of one that's a bit more kick-ass. We've got a kind of clear layout. It all looks balanced. We can see the headings clearly. We know where we're looking for stuff. We've got a clear skills section after an introductory bit. We've got contact details. I would probably add a LinkedIn link onto here. But you can just go through quickly and see all the different bits you need to see. They've got education dates. You don't have to put dates on, by the way. That's optional. We've got interesting interests. This came from, actually, I stole it off someone's actual CV from years ago, where they were the under-18s British ski champion. But obviously not everyone's got that to shout about, but if you've got anything like of interest, it's a good place to put it. You might have voluntary work or something like that you can share. But yeah, it's just, I think it's quite obviously a much cleaner layout, rather than being squashed and too small to read or what have you. It's fairly clear and easy to read, and that's what we're looking for, really. So layout wise, keeping it simple is what we want. You can use that optional tagline of words at the top, or even a headline, a bit like you'd have on a LinkedIn profile. Having something at the top that just sets the tone for the whole thing, tells people what you're all about. You can obviously relate it to the job you're applying to as well. Have a nice profile written in first person. Have your key skills. I'm a big fan of a skills section. I think it's a great place that immediately highlights what you're really good at, and you can use it to match up with the job description really easily. And it's also really scannable, so someone looks through it quickly, they can immediately see the skills that you've got and if it matches what they're looking for. The career highlights section was on that one. It's an optional section. Obviously depends how long your career is and how many kind of achievements you've got to shout about, but often people with longer careers have got quite a lot of achievements. Instead of listing them, you could still have them obviously under the jobs, but you could pick out 3 and kind of shout about them earlier on in the CV. It's a really good way of kind of really hitting people in the face straight away with like the best things that you've done. And then obviously you have your career history, then you have kind of education, qualifications and training and stuff. And then you can end it with like volunteer work and interests. Also, if you've got like tech skills or software you've got to list on there, that's usually better towards the end. It's the kind of thing that's like a bit of a tick box. You need to show that you've got those skills. But they're kind of like, it's often just a list of software. So I'm going to briefly go over how to write your profile, mostly because it's the hardest bit that everyone always asks about and panics about and just kind of doesn't know what the hell to write. And I get it. It's not an easy area at all. So my first tip for it is write it last. Do the rest of your CV. Like, it's easier to think, okay, well, I worked here from this date to that date, and put that in. You can fill out all those kind of factual things and then start to think about how to, write your achievements and stuff. By the time you've done everything else and all the skills and everything, you'll feel certainly more equipped to write your profile. Basically, it's your elevator pitch. So it's probably going to be read first. Whilst you might write it last, it's probably the thing that's going to be read first by the person that reads it. So it needs to come across really well. It needs to show you like in the most possible kind of best way you can. It's hard to do writing about yourself, so don't feel bad if you find it difficult. But try and be bold, authentic, overly used word, but really, really important. Honestly, it's the best word, which is why we still use it. I think it's good to, if you can, sort of show some heart and maybe your why. A lot of career coaches talk about, you need to know your why for why you're doing a job. Sometimes it is that we need to earn some money to look after our children or whatever, and you may not want to put that on there. So I get it, but like a lot of people have got some kind of reason why they're doing a job. So it might be that you want to help people, you want to make some kind of difference. Even if you just, like things to be more efficient, like whatever it is, there's going to be some reasons behind why you do what you do. Try and keep it fairly short. It's easy to, make this section a bit too long sometimes. 100 words max, really. Definitely use first person. It's far more impactful than writing it in third person. And quite short sentences. I say that because I've known somewhere that, you'll get a sentence that kind of lasts 3 lines and it's just a bit, a bit much. A good thing is to read it out loud. And if you're kind of struggling to not have to take a breath in the middle of the first sentence, then it's probably way too long. Try not to repeat yourself too much and don't kind of just list loads of skills, I'm good at blah, 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 blah. And like, it's just a big list because that's not a good sentence. If you're really struggling, have a little bit of a brainstorm. Get some ideas. So speak to people that know you, speak to friends, speak to colleagues, maybe your partner, anyone will kind of be honest with you. Get kind of feedback and examples of how people would describe you, because sometimes we're not the best at describing ourselves, and other people will see us in a slightly different light and will see things that maybe we don't see. So it can be really, really helpful to get those kind of words off someone else, as long as they like you. And then just write a draft, get something written down. I think that's what most people say with any kind of writing. Any author would tell you just got to start. So just get something written down, and then you've got something to work from. Even if you end up like binning a lot of it and starting again, you've got somewhere to start from. And then once you've got something, read it out loud, start refining it, and get a second opinion once you're relatively happy with it. Get someone who knows you quite well, but also who you trust to be honest, because a lot of people, oh yeah, that's great. And it's nice to have those people. We need them for some times in our lives, but also you want people who will be honest. You want a friend like me, who will always be honest with you. And I don't mean that like I'm really mean to people. I'm not. There's a way to be honest and kind. But yeah, to get proper feedback on something, you want those kind of friends that are going to. We've all got a friend like that. I think we know will give us an honest opinion on something. And also make sure you highlight your USP. So USP, for those outside the sales world, is unique selling point. It's the thing that makes you stand out against anyone else. Now, what's crucial in this job market is how you stand out, because most people are going to be getting similar kind of CVs and writing the similar sort of things if they're applying for a role that you're applying for. So you've got to find something that makes you stand out against everyone else. And everyone's trying to do the same thing, aren't they? But often people have got unique bits about themselves or the way they approach their jobs, and they haven't really thought about it. And it's worth taking the time to think about those things. Like maybe there's something about your experience that's slightly different, that you've had a mixed experience, so you've got extra bits that you bring in that other people don't. Maybe it's your approach. Maybe it's the way you are about people. Like for me, often it's the fact that my brain, because I'm autistic and ADHD, I've got like that neuro spicy brain that looks at things in a different way. So I'd probably, be pushing that as a bit of a USP against maybe someone that doesn't have that. Um, it, it will help you kind of match up to the right sort of job for you as well. And also, don't be too modest. I think most people are prone to this, especially in the UK. I don't know how many, probably mostly British people watching this, as it's people in America are asleep right now. But you've got to own your strengths. Like, we're not the best at doing that. We can be far too modest. Obviously, I've worked with a lot of senior leaders, and they're usually the most humble people. It's one of the things that makes them a good leader. It's not bad to be humble. Don't get me wrong, but obviously on a CV is where you need to be absolutely blowing your own trumpet. No one else is there to do it for you. If that's the only thing they've got that they know about you, then it's got to make you come across in the absolute best way possible. So being overly modest isn't going to help. Like, it's the one place that you need to show that confidence in your abilities. So to go through key skills quickly, the things to focus on are kind of make sure you've got your main skills. I normally pick out 5 or 6 main skill areas, so you can group some together, some naturally fall together, rather than just having a huge list of loads of different skills. Try and think of kind of skill areas that you can bring things under the same umbrella. Make sure you're including soft skills as well as technical ones. I know I was looking at developers CV the other day, and obviously they had technical skills. Like you're tripping over them. They've got every technical skill going. They've done every software. It's brilliant, but there were no soft skills at all. Now, I think even any job, you're going to have some kind of like communication skills and the ability to get on with people and build relationships and stuff. So it's important to include those soft skills as well. And obviously, as you move up, usually in leadership roles, those sort of skills become more and more important, actually, because the technical skills are kind of underpin everything. You've already got those, you've done it, you've done the hands-on stuff, but now you're leading teams doing that stuff. So your skills need to be the kind of leadership stuff, the strategic decision making, the ability to bring people together and get people to buy into the project that you're doing. So those sort of skills are even more important to get across. People want to know what kind of leader you're going to be and see if you're going to fit in with their business. Don't expect people to assume. Obviously, especially an ATS system isn't, or an AI system isn't about to assume anything. If you don't put it there in black and white, it's not going to know. So if they are looking for specific skills on the job description, make sure you're writing them down on the CV somewhere, because you want to mention all those skills that they're actually looking for. And don't forget your transferable skills. So we always get a bit bogged down with it, and I will mention transferable skills a bit more as well in a minute. But people kind of like, oh, well, what does that mean? But essentially, even if you've done a completely different job to the one you're going for, there's always going to be some skills that you've built up from those previous jobs. There's so much overlap in almost any job. You can be like, well, there's going to be some form of communication. There's going to be some sort of relationship building. There's going to be those skills that have come in somewhere. So have a really good think about where you've picked those up. And it might not even be in a job that you pick them up. It might be voluntary work or just in everyday life. You could be a team captain of a netball team or something. Like, I've got a friend who plays netball. So she could use that as one of her skills in her CV, even if she didn't have that from a previous job. So a quick example of a skills layout. Sometimes I put almost even a bit more writing than this afterwards, but the idea is you have the main skill in bold and then you say something about it afterwards. So for example, if we had budget management, if we just put budget management by itself, it doesn't really mean anything. Like, it could mean a £100 budget, or it could mean a multi-million-pound budget. So we're wanting to put stuff next to it that gives it some kind of context, some kind of scale. Like if we're talking about leadership, you could say the kind of size of team, if it's been globally, remote. Like there's all sorts of things you can say. Like if we're talking about project management, just saying project management is a bit empty, whereas you could say, oh, I've got Prince 2 and I've worked with Agile. Like there's all sorts of things you can add in, which is the kind of level of detail they might want, but it's scannable that you can see the immediate skill. So that's what makes it work, really. And some of the common skills you have, if you're struggling to think of some, most people have got some kind of sales skill, even if you don't feel like you have. Communication, obviously, relationship building, negotiation. Honestly, if you're a parent, we've all had to negotiate. Organization, budgeting, even if it's just the household budget. With the price of groceries at the moment, it's quite the challenge usually. Customer service, nearly every job has got some level of that, because even if you're working internally, it's like those people are almost like your customers that you're dealing with. So like if you're IT support or something, it's like the people in the business are almost like your customers. So it's the same skill basically you'd have to use. So career highlights, as I mentioned previously, it's kind of optional depending if you've got 3 clear achievements to showcase, but they can be kind of put at the beginning or just after skills. And then the history, 10 to 15 years max. I mean, older roles can be put on there and summarized if they're needed, but generally speaking, don't normally need to mention much from the years before. You can sometimes have a small section that just says previous jobs included, and then maybe talk about a couple of them. Is sometimes people want to name drop, like if they worked for a really big company previously, like Google or something, but it was like 20 years ago, you could include it in that little section at the end. Obviously, put the name of the employer and the job title and the dates. Just to make sure there's a clear description of what you did, but also what you achieved and how you achieved it. So you don't have to go into great detail, but the idea is to have enough there that makes someone go, oh, okay, that sounds quite impressive. Well, I wonder how they did that. It gives them enough of a taster that's enough for them to get on the phone basically and speak to you. And then you can go into the absolute detail of it in an interview. Try and include figures. Not every job has easily kind of obtainable figures, but there's usually something you can find. Any kind of quantifiable figures are really, really useful and really powerful. Try not to waffle. So when you look at it and read it back, make sure every word there is kind of required. Don't describe the company. Now, there's very kind of rare times when describing the company is a useful thing to do. If it's like a startup and it's really unheard of or something, and it's really relevant to the experience you're trying to showcase, you might want to say. I think I had one recently where it was like a nuclear startup, niche, I know, but they obviously wanted to mention that because it was really important to what they were trying to apply to next. But generally speaking, you don't want to waste space on your CV talking about someone else's company. Because most people can kind of Google or look up the company if they're desperate to know. It might just be that you want to kind of mention the size of it or something, or the overall size of the company. Try and be really positive. Sounds obvious, but people have been known. I've seen a lot of CVs, and occasionally people will put on there, was made redundant because X, Y, and Z happened. And you think you don't need to go into all that on a CV. You want to keep it as positive as possible, even if it's not anything negative for you. If there's anything negative on there at all, it's going to reflect on you. So let's keep things as positive as possible, and try and think of action words to use. I think everyone talks about action words all the time, but apparently a lot of AI systems are now set up to look for sort of action words. And I mean, don't be kind of passive and just be like, I was responsible for blah blah blah. And use bullet points. I think bullet points look great. Like, it's much easier to read when it's written in bullet points. Big chunks of text are off-putting. Like if you look at something and there's huge big chunks of text, like when someone does a a social media post and they don't put any breaks and they don't put no paragraphs, and you just see a big wall of text, you think, oh my God, I can't be bothered to read that. Or at least I do. And it might be even really well written and really interesting, but it's a real slog to get through something like that. So same token on your CV, you want to break it up like we had on that kick-ass one, have not lots of nice white space and make it really nice and readable for people. It's much easier. Optional other sections, well, not necessarily optional, but education training. Don't panic if you haven't got much. Put on what you've got. Dates are optional, like I said before. Try and keep the training relevant. You don't have to list every single course you've ever done. Keep it relevant to the job you're applying to. Pre-degree education can go, or if you've got a lot of experience, you don't, unless they're asking for GCSEs or A levels, you don't need to list them on there. Or like high school stuff if you're in America. Professional memberships, obviously some industries it's really, really important that you're a member of certain industry, professional memberships, so put those on if they're needed. Voluntary work, it could be anything, PTA, charity work, sports clubs, all of that stuff can be really useful to put on there. Also a great area for transferable skills. Interests, like I've said, only if they're interesting. Maybe sporting achievements or anything like that, anything unusual. If you're in doubt, if it's a bit dull, then leave it out, especially if you're struggling for space. Languages or technical skills also, you could either put it in the key skills section or just put it at the end. I mean, if you can speak multiple languages, that's a plus. And even if they're not looking for it in the role, it's still a great skill to mention because not everyone can. So if you've got a lack of relevant or recent experience, what do you do? So it kind of comes across like if it's relevant, because obviously if you're thinking about transferable skills, it might be that you're trying to change industry, and then you can kind of think, oh God, I haven't got the recent experience they really want. So maybe think about taking some voluntary work. I've done it myself when I first moved up to Coventry, and I was working remotely for a while, but then when I took redundancy and wasn't working, I was like, I don't quite know what to do or how to get into something else. And so I ended up doing some voluntary work locally, and actually it helped me meet people, but also it gave me some extra skills I wouldn't have had otherwise. Also talk about your ability to learn. So obviously if you're going to go into something where you're going to have to learn new software or something that you haven't got experience of, you need to make it clear that you're a quick learner and you can pick stuff up, maybe an example of something else that you've done, and learn quickly. Try and stay up to date with the industry in your own time as well. Like, so you can mention that on there, like if you've been out for a while and then going back in, make it clear that you've kind of kept up to date with things. Sometimes people have mentioned that they've gone to conferences and things like that. Try and focus on your passion for it as well. Like if you're trying to move into a different role or sector, make sure you're making it clear why you're doing that and like why that's really important to you, and then you might have a specific personal reason, or it's something that you've always wanted to do, etc. Mention skills that you do have, not what you don't. It sounds silly, but like try and again keep it positive. Having said that, if you need a qualification and say they're looking for Prince 2 and you don't have it, if you're looking to start it, I mean, obviously it depends if you can afford it, but if you can start one of those qualifications that you're going to need, you can at least then list it on your CV that it's in progress. So it sounds almost a bit sneaky, but I guess then if an AI is looking at it, it can see, oh, okay, that's listed on there, and it might help you get through to the next round, as long as you have genuinely started it, obviously. It also shows that you're willing to invest in yourself if you did something like that in your own time. And think all those transferable skills you've got, because that's how you can usually always think of other roles that you've had that have built up those skills that they are looking for. So you might just have to make it a bit more obvious, because they're not going to read between the lines. So let's get on to the power of transferable skills. We've got our CV, we've sorted it out, we've written it, but we're still thinking, how do I get into this different role? Because the definition of transferable skills is that those skills that cut across roles, industries, or sectors. So why do they matter? Well, recruiters hire potential, not just experience. This is a little fact I looked up, that 2/3 of employers value soft skills more than educational qualifications when hiring. I thought that was really interesting. It's only from last year as well, that soft skills are so valuable. rather than qualifications, because qualifications are brilliant. And don't get me wrong, if you've been really academic and you've studied a lot, that's really helpful. But obviously, if you're changing career, often you haven't got those. They haven't got that educational background in the thing you're going for. But soft skills can be something that's a lot harder to teach people, because in a way they can put you on a course for something like the actual software bit or the background of something, but it's harder to teach those other soft skills that a lot of people have kind of innately or that they've built through other jobs. So it's really, really useful to mention those. I mean, a key takeaway really is that your CV should be a skills driven story. It's not just a job list. It's like you need to be showing and thinking about each of those roles. You need to think about the skills that you've built up from each of those different roles and try and tie it into that job you're applying for. So it might be a case of looking back through a different lens at all those old jobs, and seeing them in the light of what this new job that you're going for is, and think, well, hang on, where can I see that I've done those skills or I've built up those skills that they're looking for? Because usually you can find lots of places where you have had those skills. You just might not have written it like that previously or thought about it like that before. So to identify your transferable edge, which I quite like the sound of, go back and audit your whole career, like all the projects you did, all the challenges, the wins, and look for those themes that are coming up. So maybe you're really good at problem solving and like leadership. There might be communication, data literacy, all these things that will pop up in lots of different roles. And then try and translate that context. So like I said, look at it through a different lens. So instead of saying you managed a 5-person retail team, you say you develop leadership and stakeholder skills. Like there's just a different way of framing it. So it's not dishonest, but you're framing it a different way that showcases different skills, and basically the skills they're actually looking for. So my pro tip on it would be focus on impact verbs. So there's lots that will travel between industries. It's a useful way of, like, spearheaded is probably overused, but for some reason that springs to mind. But it's just talking about the way you can kind of showcase your skills in the most positive way possible. Because AI, like I've said, it does pick up on action words now and the actual semantics of how it's written, which is kind of quite a new thing for AI. But it's, as we've said, it's getting updated all the time, isn't it? Like it's getting cleverer and cleverer. So it understands the context of things that are written in a CV now. So you can't just stuff it full of keywords and hope for the best anymore. So reframe all that experience, basically, like I've said, really. So highlight all the key skills in the job advert, go through that target role, find exactly what they're looking for, line by line, and then go through each of your bullets and check that they show measurable value. Be really strict, be really strict with your CV, and like if there might be something you've talked about that you've like really kind of clinging on to, I got this award back in wherever, but is that really valuable now? Does it showcase anything? Is it actually selling you for this new role? Because sometimes we're clinging on to old achievements or wins that are no longer relevant. So yeah, an example, if you handled customer complaints, you can talk about improving customer retention by resolving 90% of issues first contact. Now, they put in a percentage there. Obviously, make sure it's vaguely accurate. And if someone, was to check on it, it's going to be checkable and not a complete just lie, because I would never advise to lie on it on your CV. It will catch you out. But just an example where if you can get some figures to back stuff up, it's really helpful. But it's like talking about customer retention. It's the opposite, the side of the coin, isn't it? If you're dealing with customer complaints, well, then obviously you are improving customer retention. So if the role was looking for customer retention, but you didn't feel like you've done that directly in a role before, maybe you have if you've had to deal with complaints. That's all that means, really. It's like looking at it from the other side. So just showcase it all across your CV. You can use all the different areas, really. Your summary can have some skills in it with some outcomes. Your skills section obviously will have skills in it. Try not to use too many buzzwords. They can be hard to avoid. Obviously, if they're in the job description, you may need to use them, but don't get too kind of bogged down in every single buzzword. if you use ChatGPT to help you with your CV, just be aware of that, because it's prone to using the exact same buzzwords on every single person's CV. Try and weave some skills into like those achievements in your experience. And obviously, if you're using career highlights, that's the best place to showcase some of those transferable skills, if you're really like struggling to match your experience to what they're looking for. So yeah, final tips: keep the whole thing kick-ass. Tailor every CV to the job, because it's not going to work otherwise. Honestly, you've got to put that extra work in. I know you don't want to hear it, but you have to do it. And cut the fluff. Like, don't just list all the responsibilities, don't just list every single thing you did in that job. You've got to show some results. Be confident and concise. And honestly, proofread like your reputation depends on it, because it actually does. I'm a proofreader, so I always pick up on mistakes. Like, I've seen a typo in this already, like on a previous slide, and I'm annoyed. Don't just list what you did, show how you made things happen. So a very quick reminder of do's and don'ts. Put your LinkedIn link on, for goodness sake. Have a key skills section. Be positive throughout. Adapt it to the job description. Don't make it too long. Do not forget to proofread it. I mention it multiple times because it's so important, because a typo could massively undermine you. Don't squash the text up. Like, if it needs to be 3 pages, I'd rather that than 2 very squashed pages. And don't include your date of birth or nationality, because it's completely unnecessary. In the UK and US anyway, in Canada, if you're applying in another region, another part of the world, Europe, Dubai, whatever, have a check what they require, because different countries do have different CV requirements. But yeah, most of my kind of general advice is use for the US and UK. And yeah, so that's it. Any questions?
Wow. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
I told you there's a lot.
That's been amazing. I do have a couple of questions. If anyone's got a question who is live with us right now, please drop them in the chat. Debbie is saying that she's not very far from Coventry, so maybe there's going to be a meetup or something.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Debbie's my group, I think. Yeah.
There we go. And the group has a map functionality, I think, so you can go and check local people. I love the fact that you actually, I think I made already quite a few mistakes in the past in terms of putting my date of birth on there, my address, my nationality, because I don't know, I mean, probably back then it was required. A couple of years ago when I was not an entrepreneur. I'm wondering, has this changed, or is it just, I mean, I think I know why probably date of birth isn't a great idea nowadays, because people can judge, oh, this
Yeah, I
person.
mean, basically, there's laws. There's age discrimination laws. So
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, you don't want to. No one wants to be accused of age discrimination. So if you're putting your date of birth on, and then they then refuse you, you could then kind of be like, oh, it's because I have my, they knew how old I was.
Yeah, because I'm
Whereas,
Austrian or something, and my native language is German, that kind of thing, right?
yeah, exactly. So essentially, I mean, in other European countries, they insist on date of birth, and it's really odd. Like, some places like Germany are like, have a ridiculous like preference for loads of information and like marital status and all sorts of weird things, which seem mad to us in the UK. But yeah, I mean, if you're in the UK or US applying, they definitely don't want to see a photo of you, and they definitely don't want your date of birth, because they don't want to be accused of anything. Essentially, they don't want to be accused of discrimination. So it's best to keep that information off of there.
Actually good. It's a very good idea, because I do remember when I went for job interviews, when I was at the age where I was about to have children, I did get some of those discrimination kind of had those kind of conversations. They did ask me, about these things, and I thought, it's interesting, right?
I know, it's a big old red flag, right?
Yeah. Very big company, actually, very well known, interesting. Anyway, a couple of questions here from the audience. What about non-related experience like RYA, first aid?
Yeah, things like that are fantastic.
First aid
100%. 100% include those. In that training section, having those things written on there is really, really important, because it shows that you've got those extra skills. At the end of the day, that's going to be a benefit to any company you work for if you're good at something like first aid, because you're going to be
and even mental, I guess, even mental first aid, mental health.
Yeah, 100%. That's huge now. That's become a huge thing in the last few years, especially. So any of those things are going to make you a better employee, essentially. So that's going to be a positive. So anything like that.
It just shows that you go beyond the job and that you're willing to learn other things as well. That's not just necessary for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like if you do voluntary work, or if you do have, interests that take a lot of your time outside work and stuff. It's good because it shows you're a well-rounded person, that you're not just obsessed with work, and it shows that you do other things as well.
Okay, next question from Brenda and Dickie. How do you overcome and address ageism via CV?
It's hard because if people are going to be ageist, they're going to be ageist whatever you do. However, obviously you can offset it a bit. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to list every job back. So if you're only listing the last 10 years, for example, then no one knows when you started work. Whereas obviously if you list every single job you ever did since you left school, then it's going to be quite easy to age you. You don't have to put dates on education, because obviously as soon as you put the date that you graduated, again, we can work out how old you are. I mean, it's obvious that, if you've got like 30 plus years experience in something, then people aren't dumb. They're going to know that you're older. And obviously when they meet you, they're going to know you're older. But you don't have to kind of offer up so much, by putting actual dates on and things. I mean, the argument is obviously if they're going to be ageist and you get to the interview and they don't employ you because of that, there's nothing you can do about that. And it's obviously grossly unfair and horrible and unacceptable, but we obviously all know it happens as well. But don't give them the ammunition on your CV, because at least if you get in front of someone, it might be that they've got kind of some quite preconceived ideas maybe about people over 50 or something. But then when you meet them in person and you inspire them with some of your ideas or whatever in the interview, those preconceived ideas might be like, oh, I was completely wrong, this person's got loads to offer. That's the ideal situation, obviously. So just don't kind of lead them down the kind of age path on the CV, if you can help it. That would be my advice on it, honestly. I mean, a lot of people have it like a badge of honor that they're whatever age and they've got however many years experience. And fair play, they should, because it should be a massive benefit to a company to have someone coming in with all that experience. But yeah, if it's something you're particularly worried about, obviously you don't need to give lots of that information away if you don't want to.
Yeah, good. And then the question here is, what differences should we be aware of when writing CV for UK versus a CV for US?
Yeah, interesting. There's not a huge difference, generally speaking, because I've seen very similar CVs work in the US and the UK, because I've worked with both UK and US clients. There's not normally a massive difference in it. I think sometimes it's good to kind of know, like if you're going for like federal jobs and stuff in the government, there's obviously very specific information they want. The same as here. If in the UK you're going for local authority stuff, they usually want to know every single job you've ever done and all sorts of extra information. So you need to look at the specifics of where you're applying and what they actually want, which you can sometimes find out online. But I would say for a general CV, there isn't a massive difference. Obviously, the spelling sounds silly, but like having the right US spelling for stuff on one version and then the UK spelling on another version is quite important, because it will kind of flag up maybe if you've done it the other way. It also looks like you've used AI. If you're applying in the UK and you've just got loads of US spelling, people might assume it's because you use ChatGPT or whatever, which might not be a plus point. But I wouldn't say there's massive differences, actually. There's sometimes kind of nuances and stuff of the way you might word something, but
I think I did have a question earlier, but you did answer that about the ChatGPT and using AI to help writing CV, because obviously there's a lot of work if you are applying to many jobs, and you said that we need to tailor each application. And then because I do work a lot with ChatGPT in particular, what I noticed is that it takes on my own voice better when I speak to it. So it's almost like I voice journal. And I think that one slide that you presented there in terms of how to pull out your transferable skills, I'm probably going to test this and just answer it somehow, and then say, okay, pull out the transferable skills for me, and use and analyze my voice, how I speak, and make sure that when you write it, do it in that way. I think that could be
ChatGPT can be fantastic, or any AI. Other AIs are available, but
yeah,
I mean, I tend to use ChatGPT as well. But yeah, it's as good as what you give it. So if I just say, oh, here's like my history or whatever, my career history, and write me a CV, it can write me one, but it's not going to sound like me, is it? Because how would it know what I sound like? And so, like you said, the more you give it of your voice, I mean, literally, if you talk to it, but even written, like the more you've given it, the more it can do it in your voice. So if you've written your CV yourself, for example, to start with, and then you give it the CV and a job description and say, which areas do I need to change to adapt it to this job description? It'll be really good at then highlighting and saying, oh, you need to change this, this, and this. You can definitely use it as a tool, but just make sure you've done enough in your own voice to start with, because doing stuff from scratch from it, it's not so good at. Like, it will just do it in its own voice because it hasn't got anything else to go by. And then also will make stuff up, like if you're not careful. Like, you have to be really keep it on track. And give it really clear guidelines and boundaries, because otherwise it can sort of fly off onto inventing its own little story about something, or add in a random fact that wasn't relevant.
It does that sometimes. That's why what I do is I use the voice recording, and I just ramble for a while, and I go through maybe some self-reflecting questions. Yeah, I do that all the time because I'm really lazy when it comes to typing things up. And I find it really helpful because I just ramble, and then it helps me to structure my thoughts and maybe categorizes different things, so you could use it like that. And then it writes something, and then again, I go over it. And again, I turn on the voice note and I read what it's written to me. And I was like, oh, no, I don't agree with this. Change it over maybe, to something like this or whatever, right? So that's how I work with it. I always use the voice recording, and I don't think a lot of people are actually using it that way yet, but it is so much quicker than having to write it all down. And again, my grammar is not perfect. My thoughts are very unstructured when I do some brainstorming, and it really, really helps me just to be able to just ramble and just talk to it.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be really helpful, actually. Yeah, I might have to try that now.
So there are a lot of thank yous here. We'd like to thank you guys as well for joining us live. Very briefly, where can you find Rebecca? She's got a school community. I think some of you are already in there, but we'll post it in the comments as well. I also have a school community too, and Rebecca is actually now part of my school community because we're trying to put together other resources that are not just career related, but also well-being focused, home life focused. And I think that's the reason why I said, hey, Rebecca, I'd love you to come and do a talk also in my community, because it just fits hand in glove with what I'm building, and collaborating is always a great thing to do. So just quickly share with you what I have here to close off. Rebecca, just tell me if you can see my PowerPoint slide.
Yeah, I can see the. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
it's coming up. So yeah, because as I already said, we're working along the same lines. I work a little bit more with leadership as well, and we also talk about well-being in my community, because we all know we all have stress, burnout, lack of motivation. We feel anxiety, frustration. Maybe we're battling the system right now. We're in an organization, and of course we want to get out and use these CV tips to then find a role of our choice. So what we've created is a whole package. Basically, it's called the Empower Me Hub. So it is really focused for those who want to get the pay rise, the recognition, and the confidence without burning out. We have a kind of a 7-day challenge when you come in, where we lead you through different items. Like, for example, Rebecca will help you with the CV, and of course you can also book more time with her, and she has other packages available. And so we have other speakers, about 50 by now actually, who do different things inside the community. So if you're tired of seeing less qualified colleagues pass you by, you feel under-recognized, underpaid, or stuck in the wrong role, you want to earn more, step into leadership, and you're ready to grow, then perhaps this could be a great opportunity to join also the Empower Me Hub community. We have holistic training because we think this is the whole human that we're talking about. Quite often when we are at work, we either get the leadership training or the well-being, or not enough of one, or not enough of the other. So it's really about, you can come in, have a community of like-minded people, get a clear pathway, and also we'll give you an assessment to begin with to see what's your life priority and your career business goals as well. So we'll help you with that. We have accountability, and you are in control of your career because you can take this membership and the learnings into any other organization. It's not dependent on your employer, basically. So these are some of the things we have already built inside the Empower Me Hub. So obviously Rebecca is quite clearly sitting inside the career space. We also have people who talk about mental, financial, emotional, physical well-being. We have team leadership, self-leadership talks as well. And we have also some live training. So if you are inside the community, we have also Zoom calls where you can come, you can ask questions. And every Monday, right now, my business partner is running the Monday Soul Boost, which is really, really cool. So it's really giving you a boost on accountability every Monday as well. So like a very short talk. We have the community, as I already mentioned. We've got a calendar where you can see live events, and then the classroom where all the replays are inside as well. You can come in right now as a free 7-day trial. You can join, have a look around, test the platform. And if you're ready, you can use this QR code. This is Rebecca's link, so anyone who's joining, Rebecca will get a little thank you from us as well. And you also have 50% off for a lifetime. So Rebecca, any last nuggets, anything that you want to share, because you've been in the community as well? Do you think it's a great space to be for people who want to?
Yeah, I think, like you said, both our communities cross over, and we're kind of on the same page with how to run our communities in a way. So, it's nice to have that safe space where you can chat to people about kind of anything, but also feel like you're kind of doing something to better yourself. And keep things positive, because like you said, the holistic approach, like I find for people looking for jobs, is really important. You need to look after your mental health as well as like trying to get a new job, or trying to improve any area of your leadership or whatever. You've got to sort of look after yourself as well. That's really important. But yeah, as far as CV writings goes, just try and make it sound like you. Honestly, try and be yourself, because generic, boring CVs are very old-fashioned now. We need it to sound like us, because that's what will sell you. That's what will get you an interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate you being here. And of course, we will also put the talk into the community. I'll post the link. And look forward to continue these conversations. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Have a good week. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.